Hey, this is AJ with Bushcraft, and today I'm just gonna rant a little bit. This happens quite frequently where individuals will ask, what survival knife would you recommend and which one should I purchase? And you get questions asked that sometimes it just gets to be a real drag, and not because you get tired of answering the question, but because you start really understanding that with some individuals, they just need some help. They need some help understanding the reality of survival and everything that kind of goes into that. And it's not just about a knife. And so in reply, I'll usually ask them, well, what are you wanting your knife to accomplish? And usually blank stares follow, and then they'll follow up and say, well, when I'm out and about and I'm camping and hiking, if crap really hits the fan, I just want to have that knife with me. And I guess I can understand that to a point, but I'll usually ask them a follow-up question somewhere along the lines of, okay, well, let's say that you're out in the desert and say that you're hot and you're scorched and you're fatigued and you are extremely thirsty and you're 20 plus miles from getting any type of help. If you had a choice, would you rather reach for a really cool survival knife or a 3-liter bag of water? Would your knife serve you better in that situation than 3 liters of water and the means to carry the water in your attempt to get help or find yourself navigating this type of a situation? And then further, if you ended up getting heat stroke and that set in, how reliable and how great would that knife be in that situation? Okay. Excuse me. So I ask those questions because obviously a good knife can be great. I'm not disputing that, and I'm not ragging on having a survival knife at all, but too many folks are very wrong in the way they think about survival and survival knives and survivability. A survival knife is not a magic tool, and depending on the survival situation, it might provide you zero benefit. That is the reality of survival. Surviving or not dying, as I like to look at it, the ability to not die has very little to do with a knife, in my opinion. By responding the way that I respond, I really hope to get them thinking maybe a little bit differently about survival. That survival is more based on mindset and a correct understanding of what allows an individual to not die, versus, if I go out and get this really cool knife, then somehow that makes me a survivalist and I'm going to do all these cool things with my knife without really understanding why survivalists and individuals that spend a lot of time in the field typically carry a knife anyway. And so taking this teaching opportunity with these folks really helps clear the cobwebs of what I firmly believe, based on conversations, is a very incorrect and misunderstanding based on a lot of the crap they see on TV that's pushed through survival TV reality shows, which many are out there. And the misconceptions are that these TV shows present extremely unrealistic, hypothetical situations that are imagined up in the minds of producers. But then they take those situations at face value, that, what I'm watching on TV, because it's called reality television, that is the reality of survival. That's one of the first problems. The second problem is that they can just whip out a hyped up survival knife, and cut their way through any survival situation. As long as I have my knife, I'm going to survive. As long as I have my knife, I'm going to survive. It's just not true. The third misconception is them thinking that survival is glamorous and entertaining and adventurous, when the reality of finding yourself in a survival situation, it is anything but. Survival situations are not glamorous. They're not entertaining. They're very high stress. And if you find yourself not making correct choices and maintaining rational thought, it literally can mean the difference between life and death, because there's very little room for error in real life situations that are not just imagined and presented on TV for the sake of entertainment value and allowing these producers to make their money. With the real life survival situations that I've been in, it's never been about saving my own life. It's been about responding to save the life of another individual. And then in these situations that I've been in, my knife absolutely provided zero value in those cases. What turned the tide in those situations was a clear understanding of first aid and responding, thinking rationally, not panicking, knowing how to minimize stress response, understanding that time is of the essence, being able to respond appropriately, proficiently, quickly, and also a lot of what I believe is divine intervention to allow things to line up the way that they need to in less than ideal circumstances in order to navigate a survival situation. Others may just refer to that as just luck. That's the reality of a lot of survival situations. It's not me being out in the jungle, using one hand to hold an anaconda, whip out my trusty survival knife, dispatch it, use it as an improvised sleeping bag to endure a very harsh night in the jungle. That works for TV, but that is not the reality of real life survival situations. Real life survival situations in large part may be related to medical and or injury response. It's not going to be, I'm presenting myself in this situation, I'm jabbing my knife into the stone wall to scale up this cliff face, and all these really imaginary, unrealistic hypotheticals. That is not the reality of survival. When considering the survival knife, it also should only be looked at as a tool to help aid with some survival-related tasks. It's not an encompassing fix-all, save-all tool that if you have a knife, then you don't need to worry about anything else. Just give me my really cool survival knife and I'll be fine. No matter what knife I were to recommend or anybody would recommend, or how much micarta, how much jimping, if it's made from CPM 3V super still, that really may not mean crap if you really find yourself in a legitimate survival situation. That brings me back to the point that how awesome a knife is, or how expensive, or who recommends it, what it's made of, means absolutely nothing if your greatest survival resource, which is yourself and your brain, shut down. What good's that knife going to do you? It's about yourself and your brain and understanding how your body responds and what your body needs in order to not die. And then to understand how you can use whatever resources you have at your disposal, including a survival knife, in order to increase the likelihood of not dying. That's really how survival should be looked at. So before getting all focused on a survival knife, it's better to understand survival as it relates to what your body requires to not die. Survival depends on taking actions versus what functional or gimmicky knife you may or may not choose to carry on your person. Surviving and not dying has everything to do with the following: being able to breathe, maintaining core body temperature, adequate hydration, calorie intake, and the body's ability to respond to and overcome injury and sickness. That's what you have to look at. So for example, how many of us have ever gone on a really good run or had a really good workout, went on a hike, and end up feeling thirsty? How about feeling hungry? How about, like what I did, turning on the fireplace, getting out of the cold, putting on a coat, getting out of the wind because my body feels cold. What about swimming and diving down and swimming underneath the water and then feeling the need to surface for air? How about what most of us take for granted, which is our daily routine? We wake up in the morning, we go to work, we do whatever we need to do in the day, we have our meals, we get to the end of the day and we lay down and we go to bed and sleep, and then we repeat that process all over again the next day. How about going to the doctor when you feel sick? Maybe you have an infection and it requires an antibiotic in order to allow for full healing. Now, let me ask you this. How many of you consciously really think about all of these things? So, for example, if you're swimming and you're under the water, do you consciously tell yourself while you're swimming under the water, I think I'm going to go up and replenish my air and get a good breath? Or if you're thirsty, do you really consciously say, I think right now I'm going to walk over to the faucet and fill up a cup of water because I'm thirsty? Or when you're hungry, you just usually walk over to the fridge or you go to a fast food place or whatever it may be and you get some food. What about breathing? Do you consciously sit there and tell yourself, I need to breathe? You just don't. The body and the signals that are being sent become automatic in many regards. And you really don't typically think about these types of things related to your body's required needs to survive until something disrupts your body's routine. So for example, you have some type of a situation that arises that is unexpected. It's an emergency situation and disrupts something within the auto-programmed response that your body's used to. At that point, you start thinking, okay, this is what I need to do, or this is what I should do, or maybe some people start panicking because they don't know what to do as it relates to their survivability. Your body is such a complex machine that it understands exactly what it needs to survive, and it's continually sending you messages on what to do in order to not die. And that's really, survivability is really that. It's looking at and understanding those things that are required and understanding as it relates to, I guess, wilderness survival or survival craft, understanding exactly what you need to do if you're caught in less than ideal circumstances in order to keep your body from dying, okay? And unfortunately, not all real life survival scenarios are going to end with positive outcomes. They're just not. I mean, the news is replete with examples of situations that no matter if people had resources available and at their disposal, whatever the case may be, they just don't end out positive. Some people that actually had a survival knife within reach and still ended up perishing because of however many other circumstances that there were that individual needed to take into consideration, or even if they did take into consideration, things just did not go the way that they should, and the outcome was not positive. So it's important to understand that no matter how cool of a survival knife you have or any tool, survivability really has more to do with the mindset and the body's ability to respond and get exactly what it needs in order to not die than it does any type of a tool. And how a person prepares and responds to such survival situations will differ greatly based upon their knowledge, based upon their skill sets, based upon training and confidence and preparation. Mental capacity could be a huge thing too. Remember when COVID kind of set in over a year ago and everything started going crazy in the news and the media? You probably saw it in your own city. there were crazy fanatics everywhere, stocking up on things like toilet paper and food and water and medical supplies. Well, did you ever ask yourself why they were doing that other than just acting like a bunch of crazy fanatics? What actually was causing them to act that way? It's survival response. In simpler terms, their brain was telling them, you need to go do X, Y, and Z and stock up on A, B, and C, or you're going to die. That's why we saw what we did. I mean, I saw on the news some dude coming out of a Costco with like 26 gallons of milk stocked to the brim, and I'm just like, okay, but in his mind, it all made sense. Now contrast that with other people when the pandemic hit that were able to remain calm and act rationally because they had been preparing long before COVID for crap hits the fan scenarios when they may need to hunker down and may not be able to just go to the store and purchase everything that they need because they had sufficient supply of food and water and medicines or whatever other resources they felt they need. Why didn't they act irrational and crazy? Because their brain was telling them that there was no need to. Your body has everything that you need at your disposal in order to not die. Ergo, you don't need to go out and act like some crazy lunatic that's out there causing a lot of the problems. And that also explains why people's mentalities and characters actually can go south in survival situations too. What somebody may do under rational circumstances when their back's up against the wall and their life's on the line may be completely different. They, in many regards, may turn very animalistic. That's very common. We've seen that throughout the whole history of catastrophes in our own country. I mean, I remember when Hurricane Katrina hit, all the looting that took place, all the violence, everything that happened, because people were in fear of their lives. It was survival response. And they were pushed to do whatever they felt was necessary, even if it was immoral, even if it was irrational and radical behaviors. But to them, it made complete sense because they felt that they were going to die. So it's interesting to me that in these real case survival situations, crap hits the fan situations, not those imagined up and doctored up and pushed through reality TV shows, it's interesting to me to really see what people turn to, both the crazies as well as the rational individuals. They're not stocking up on survival knives, for heaven's sakes. They're stocking up on the things based on what they know their body needs to survive. Water, food, medicines, hunkering down, shelter, trying to stay warm, all these different things. I didn't see anybody, not to my knowledge at least, maybe I missed it in some, news report somewhere on some news channel, of somebody walking around with 10 crates of survival knives. Is a survival knife going to feed your hungry family? Is a survival knife going to give you a good drink of water to hydrate your body? Is it going to heal your wounds and provide medical needs for you or your family? Can it be a tool that can assist in some of those things? Yeah. But is it going to be the cure-all, fix-all? No, it's not. When you can consciously understand what your body needs to function and not die, and not just what your body is doing via auto-programmed response like breathing, you then can start to begin to see that as I choose gear options and as I want to enhance my ability with survival, you start seeing how those tools fit in with your ability to provide what the body needs in order to not die, for yourself as well as for your loved ones. And you also begin to just kind of develop that mindset that you can look all around at things that people wouldn't even consider survival resources and have the brain start connecting those dots and putting the puzzle together, how you might be able to use some of those things at your disposal in order to increase the likelihood of you not dying. So survivability is very much mindset related. It comes with an understanding of your body and the needs that you have, and understanding how to leverage resources in order to provide what the body is telling you all the time automatically that it needs not to die. Okay, and why do I feel passionate about this? I feel passionate about it because, I grow irritated and tired that so many people that are wanting to get into survival and survival craft are so overly focused on a tool like a survival knife because of the crap that they're seeing pushed on TV all the time. You get these survival reality TV personalities that, quite frankly, it just frustrates me. It's bad information. It's unrealistic. It's not survival. They have a film crew and a production crew. Their lives aren't on the line. It's not real. And I think it really does a disservice to individuals that legitimately, based on their best intentions, are trying to suck in and absorb good information to make good decisions, but they get overly focused on these minute, minuscule, irrelevant details like, I want a survival knife. Well, that's great, but I would rather have food and shelter and a roof over my head and be able to hunker down and not deal with all the crazies and maybe have a way of protecting my family and myself from harm, versus walking around thinking that because I have a cool survival knife, because it's something that was pushed by a TV personality or those types of things, that somehow I'm a survivalist. It's like, why don't you first focus on understanding the whole concept and mentality behind survival and survivability before you start focusing on tools of the trade? Speaking of survival TV personalities, there was one video that I came across, apparently from some guy. I have no idea who he is. I know what show he was in. It's a series that I'd never bring myself to watch just because it's complete and utter bullcrap. But it was him demonstrating how to start fire in the rain with his knife. Okay. And it was, honestly, the video was absolutely hilarious. Okay, so first of all, the title, How to Start a Fire in the Rain. There was absolutely no rain. Okay, he just talked about how it had been raining and how everything is wet and how he was going to demonstrate using his knife how to start this fire and how cool this was. And so from start to finish, the whole focus on this guy's video was more about how great the knife was to allow him to accomplish what he needed to do. And the whole fire was a complete fail. I mean, everything from his technique, everything from the tinder choices that he chose, pulling tree lichens off of the branches, claiming that, oh yeah, this is one of the best tinders you can use. You grab this old man's beard and, well, it had just been raining, dude. It's like tree lichens survive because of drawing moisture out of the air. So unless they're completely dry, not just picked off of a tree, it's probably not going to work too well. To a big thing of what was supposedly pine resin or tree resin on the ground and how he was going to dig it up because everything under was dry. Well, if it had been raining, did it not occur to you that you can actually get groundwater that travels underneath what otherwise might be a protective resin shield? So this techniques with feather sticking, just a complete and utter fail. And then what was even more hilarious about this whole video with this TV reality super survivalist is he pulls a cotton ball out of his pocket and whips out his trusty ferro rod, ignites this cotton ball, and then cheers like a schoolboy who just won a free pencil and a notepad from his first grade teacher about how great he did and just relished. And so you got the cotton ball burning, and then all of a sudden you can just totally tell that the way that he prepared the base of the fire to the tinder choices to everything, it just completely, utterly sucked the life out of the flame to nothing more than just a smoking smolder. And then that's how the video ended, as he branded again this great knife that he had. And I was like, okay, well, that's the most interesting thing I've ever seen. You'd think that if you were going to put something out there as far as how to start fire in the rain, you would talk to people first and foremost about the benefit of getting out of the rain in order to minimize the amount of moisture that you're having to contend with, how to appropriately harvest dry materials from wood that otherwise is wet on the outside. Just so many different things you could do. And, I'm trying to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because every one of us has had fails. It's just how it is. Okay. I've been out in the field and I've made some terrible decisions that I've had to learn from. Everybody has. Nobody's situations will go completely as planned 100% of the time, no matter how prepared you are. That's the reality. But it's also a good thing to be able to improvise and to be able to talk through, not demonstrate a felling fire and then to clap and be all excited because your cotton ball lit on fire. Well, duh. It's like you had dry tinder. That's a no-brainer. What would you do if you didn't have that? And I'm trying to be sensitive and not overly critical because I know I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect out there. But to also understand that, I've lit fires when it's wet, and I understand how very hard and what a chore it is when you are trying to light and especially maintain a fire if you're contending with moisture. It's a pain. And quite frankly, it's not successful all the time. Sometimes you just have to hunker down and wait till the rain stops to where you can get yourself in a position to get the fire going, which I think is what he was trying to intend to demonstrate, which didn't work. But the whole point that I'm trying to make after rambling now for the better part of 20 minutes is the success of his fire, which ultimately was a fell, but the part of the flame that you actually could see in the video had nothing to do with the flipping knife. It just didn't. It was all about the cotton ball and the ferro rod. It had nothing to do with the knife. Okay, any little bit of success that he had nothing to do with the knife. And that's the whole point that I'm trying to make here is I bring this up because this situation is not unique. How many times you've heard about a hiker that gets lost, or a hunter that got lost, or a Boy Scout that got lost, had a whole pack full of gear or other things they could have used and end up perishing. Now, I don't say this in disrespect to people that have lost their lives, but I use it as an example that survival, in many regards, if you have resources at your disposal, but you don't understand the body's response and what it needs to survive in order to utilize those resources to provide the body what it needs in order to not die, no amount of gear that you have, no survival knife you have, no tent that you have, no ability to make fire that you have, none of that stuff even matters if you don't understand how it fits into the entire equation of survivability. If you're wanting to get into survival, one of the biggest things that I can't stress enough is understanding exactly what the body needs not to die. You need oxygen. You need to be able to maintain core body temperature. You need hydration. Your body needs water. You need food. Being able to get adequate rest. You need to sleep. Your body has to sleep. It's like a large battery that has to be recharged. And even when I was in the service and we were working on just minimal hours of sleep, you had to make time to give your body rest, even if it was only a couple hours and then you're going, another 17 hours with no sleep. It was that necessary. Your body has to have rest. Even in small amounts, it's better than nothing. And the military understood that for what it was, because sometimes you weren't able to sleep. Then other times it was required you need to make time to get yourself a couple hours of really poor sleep at that, but to be able to have the required necessity of allowing your body to have rest. And your body needs to be able to recover from illness and infection. That's it. That's how your body survives. Oxygen, water, food, core body temperature, rest, and its ability to respond and recover from illness and infection. And if you can always have that at the forefront of your mind, if you are a new survivalist listening to this rant, and you can have that at the forefront of your mind, then as you go out and decide to purchase gear, Okay, at that point, say, yeah, I want to get a good survival knife. What knife do you like? Well, why do you want it? You know what? I need it because I understand how that fits into the survival equation of allowing myself to have a tool among many tools to provide the resources that my body needs in order to not die, such as shelter, such as building fire, to have an effective cutting tool, to be able to use it to hunt, to be able to use it for personal protection, whatever that may be. You're purchasing the gear item because you understand how it fits into what your body needs and the requirements for it to not die. So this was very long. I apologize. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Add your comments. I'd love to hear your comments on this topic as well. And again, you want to get a survival knife, great, but if your survival focus is all based upon a knife or any gear item without understanding the core concept of survivability, no amount of gear is going to do you any good. This is AJ from Blackhawk Bushcraft. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Take care.